I'm Gavin, and this is MLS Fantasy Picks.
Before we get into round 6 picks, here's a quick round 5 recap. An okay week for me. I ended with 80 points for round 5. I had a week rank of 651, and my overall rank is now 49. My budget increased from 118.9 million to 123 million. What went right? My last minute switch ups. My original lineup needed some changing after lineups were shared and after my bench plays failed miserably. However, I was very happy to see Marshall Ruddy get the 9, and then I ended up playing Costa from San Jose at defense instead of taking Suarez as 4, which I'm glad I did. What went wrong? A couple of flops from Alba and Heel. Heel surprisingly isn't a set and forget type of player this year. New England isn't doing so hot, and Heel doesn't look like he used to. Overall, I was pleased with my score and my ranking was looking good, but I didn't play Bouanga this week. I kept seeing him score and my ranking dropped and dropped. Still, not a bad week. Let's take a look at the MLS Fantasy Picks leagues. Looking at the MLS Fantasy Picks Open League, I've got to give a shout out to Sound of the Loris, a huge 114 week this week, bringing them to the top of the table. They had both Bouanga and Morgan this week. You can't go wrong with those picks. And looking at the head-to-head league, we've still got 14 undefeated teams. Well done to everyone in both leagues. All right, let's get into round 6. All right, as always, getting things started with key considerations for the round. And this one's more of a note, less of something to keep in mind, but this is the last week of the first quarter of the MLS Fantasy Champions League. So the top 50 players from this quarter of the season will qualify for the Champions League. So if you're close, good luck. I think I'm sitting on the 49th out of 50 spots, so hoping for a good week this week. And another note for bye teams, we've got New England on the bye. So I think there's a 4.0 keeper, 4.0 defenders, 4.0 midi, but I don't think there's any 4.0 forwards to use for your keeperoos, switcheroos, and autoroos. All right, let's get started with keepers. I've got Steve Clark with Houston at home against San Jose. I think Houston are pretty decent at defense. Clark's not the cheapest. I think he's about $7 million. So if you're willing to spend the cash, Clark could be a good pick this week. Then also Calendar, Miami. Yes, that was a rough week last week, losing to the Red Bull. But they're at home against NYCFC, who are looking better, but still not awesome. So I like that Calendar's back for Miami. Maybe they'll do a little bit better defensively this week. But looking at standard, I think this is where I'm going to be going this week. We've got Blake at home against Minnesota. Philly looked like a completely different team last week against Portland, so I like Blake this week with that early matchup. And then I've got whoever is in net in Toronto. I'm not sure if it's going to be Gavron or Johnson, but I like that matchup at home against SKC. Yes, SKC can be dangerous at times, but Toronto has been really solid defensively this year, and they're at home. And then with the budget pick, there's not a lot of great options this week, and the Galaxy aren't really known for their clean sheets so far this season, but McCarthy's at like a 4.9 with the late game. So yeah, put him on the back end of a keeperoo. Hope for the best that you won't have to use him, but he's an option. All right, looking at defenders. So I feel like I really haven't changed this much in all of my videos, but you've got Alba and Gressel. I'm maybe like leaning towards Gressel a bit more than Alba. Alba's been struggling a bit, but yeah, if you're willing to spend the money, look for those guys in Miami. But a guy I like a bit more this week is Lennon for Atlanta against Chicago. Atlanta are at home. You've seen Lennon be a bit dangerous on the attack, setting those crosses in. So I like Lennon this week. And then maybe not a huge favorite since Columbus are away. I've got Amundsen and Zawadzki, two of the more expensive Columbus defenders away at Charlotte. Charlotte have been known to score, but I do like Columbus. Hopefully Nance's back after he had that illness last week. But yeah, I still like Columbus. They're a really strong squad this year. And then looking at standard pricing, I've got some of the Houston defenders. They do range in price. I've got Escobar here. You could also look at Dorsey or any of the other Houston defenders. But they are at home against San Jose. Houston's a pretty strong team at home defensively, and they're not too expensive if you're looking to save some budget on your defense. Another option, not necessarily known for their defense, but Mosquera can get pretty dangerous on the attack, and they're against Vancouver away this week. And Vancouver hasn't been super solid on the defensive front either. So I like Mosquera, and he's not going to break your budget. Another option, it's fun to see Kai Wagner back on the screen here. He's usually a fantasy, workhorse, but Philly's been struggling to get the year started. So hopefully they're going to turn things around after that Portland game. They're at home against Minnesota, and they've got an early game. So if anything, if you still don't trust him, throw him on your bench. Hope for the best. And then budget, while Marshall Ruddy isn't super cheap, he's still not crazy expensive yet. Toronto, as I said before, they're pretty good defensively. They're at home. SKC. I like Toronto this week. And then another option, you've got some cheap Union defenders that aren't Wagner. So Bizo, Glesnes, Elliott, any of them, whoever's starting, put them on your bench for the early game and see how they do. And then I was just looking for some other, starters this week. I don't really recommend Junqua, but if you really need someone, he's there. And then the same thing for your Yamane. Galaxy, as I said, with their goalkeeping, defensively aren't super strong, but Yamane should be starting, and he is cheap. Moving right along to midfielders. So, hard to pass up Lucho. Since you're away at Charlotte, I like the matchup. Yes, he is expensive, but he's got a pretty solid floor, and yeah, can't go wrong with Lucho. I also do like Evander, even though they are away at Vancouver. Portland's looked really good, especially on the attacking side. Luckily, Philly beat them last week, but I do like that matchup against Vancouver, and he's not super expensive yet. And Ricky Puig, Puig really turned it on last week. I think he got some extra 3 points for that assist after they did some point corrections, so that was good to see. They're at home against Seattle, who have been struggling. Let's hope Seattle doesn't get too many guys back, as I think this will be a great opportunity from a fantasy perspective for the Galaxy. And speaking of the Galaxy, I've still got Paintsel here. I'm more of a Puig fan than Paintsel myself, but Paintsel is very dangerous on the wing and also creates a lot of chances. Then of course can't forget Thiago Almada. Atlanta are at home. You've got to pick up Almada this week. And then Gazdag, I haven't really talked much about so far this season, but as I said before, Philly, you have the early game. You can always throw him on your bench. He's known for his PKs. And yeah, other than that, Gazdag's usually involved in the goal creation for Philadelphia. And he's not too expensive, maybe at like an 8.4 or 8.6. And then I do like Moreno. As I said, Portland are pretty dangerous on the attack. Evander and Moreno connect a lot, and they have a decent matchup away at Vancouver. And then Delgado, he's probably just good for a floor if you don't want to spend too much money on your midfield. But he has been getting involved in their goal creation. So I do like Delgado as well. And then Atuesta, a bit of a random flyer pick, but if LAFC do decently against Colorado, someone in LAFC's midfield has to step up and see Atuesta being that guy in the future. And then Herbers, been a solid budget pick these last few weeks, and he keeps producing points somehow. I'm not a huge fan. I wouldn't really recommend him, but he is a cheaper option on the midfield side. Someone I would recommend a bit more if he's starting is Quinn Sullivan. Quinn's been really stepping up this year. And yeah, Philly are at home. Let's hope they're turning things around against Minnesota this weekend. All right, let's take a look at forwards. So I've got Suarez. Miami are at home against NYCFC. Suarez didn't really get any goals or assists last week, but he still had a decent 4, I guess. But yeah, Miami are at home. Let's hope he turns things around this week. They've got Cucho. Cucho's hard one not to pick, especially against Nashville after Nashville struggled a lot against LAFC last week. And then Jovic at the LA Galaxy. So, yeah, we'll see if Jovic can keep that goal streak going. I think he's at 5 weeks in a row now. They're at home against Seattle. I'm not sure when that streak will stop, but yeah, keep playing him while he's in good form. And then Benteke. DC is home against Montreal, and Benteke is such a force in the box. I do like him, and he's not too expensive like your Cuchos or Jovic's. And then Bouanga. Bouanga really, he had a great week last week. He just kept scoring and scoring. I struggled not picking him. We'll see how AFC does against Colorado away, but Bouanga is still a pretty decent pick this week. And of course, Giacomakis. Atlanta are at home against Chicago. He's not too expensive. He should get you a price rise. Highly recommend Giacomakis this week. Another guy with a long name, Federico Bernardeschi. You've got Toronto at home against SKC. It looked like Insigne might have picked up a knock last week. I don't know, but that just means Bernardeschi will probably step up a bit more, so I like him this week. And then King Julian, Carranza, Philly are at home against Minnesota. If you're still not trusting Philly, still not a bad bench play. He's a very dangerous striker for Philly. I don't recommend going super budget on your strikers this week. There's a lot of good forward options, plenty to pick from, but if you do want to go cheap, Aliyu, I feel, he didn't have a great week last week, but he has been pretty strong throughout the season. So yeah, take a look at Aliyu if you need to. Finishing things off with captains, Ricky Puig. I think he got an 11 last week, which is a great score if you captained him. I like Puig. They're at home against Seattle, who are struggling. I could see him creating a lot this week. Same thing goes for Mr. Almada. They're playing Chicago, who let in plenty of goals, and Almada is the creator for Atlanta. He is a late captain, so hopefully he doesn't get scratched or anything, but still a good idea. And I feel like forwards are really stepping up a lot this MLS fantasy season. I normally only captain midfielders, but Suarez could be a good pick if Miami ends up turning things on and doing pretty well against NYCFC. We will have to see. Wraps up my round 6 picks. Thanks everyone for watching. As always, feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, if you are close to the Champions League, good luck. I hope you make it. I'm quite close myself. We'll see how this week goes. Yeah. And if you don't, there's always next quarter. Good luck, everyone.